All right, so we're calling this one The Father Who Ran. And I know, that title kind of sounds like a contradiction, right? But stick with me, because this story, it might just flip everything you think you know about being accepted. Okay, I want to start with just a number. 64%. Any guesses what that could be? So that's the number of Americans who grew up in the church, but completely disengaged from their faith by the time they hit their late 20s. That's a huge number, right? But honestly, the really interesting part isn't that they're leaving, it's the reason why they're walking away. Almost half of them said something that sounds a lot like this. See, they weren't ditching their belief in God. They were just tired, absolutely exhausted from the pressure, the constant feeling of trying to measure up, feeling like if you make one wrong move, you're out. And that leads us right into our first big idea here, what we're calling an exhausted faith. Because what this all points to is a crisis that isn't really about disbelief at all. It's about performance. It's about spiritual burnout. And listen, this isn't just about the people who leave. Even for those who stay, check this out. A study found that 57% of practicing Christians feel more like God's employees than his kids. Like they're just working for approval, trying to earn their spot. And another 38%, they're just kind of going through the motions. The author Timothy Keller, he just nails this. He said the biggest reason for spiritual burnout isn't that people don't know enough about God, it's the sheer exhaustion of trying to reach him. Like he's way up at the top of some spiritual ladder and we've got to climb our way up. And that's the version of the gospel so many people end up believing, even if they don't realize it. It's this spiritual treadmill, right? Step 1, God is holy, you're not. Step 2, try harder, pray more, be better. Step 3, and then maybe, just maybe, God will accept you. But here's the thing, that's not the story Jesus told, not even close. Which brings us to the story behind the story. See, one of Jesus's most famous parables, the one we usually call the prodigal son, was actually told as a direct takedown of this whole performance-based mindset. It all starts with a complaint, actually. The religious leaders of the day are just disgusted. They're grumbling. This guy, he welcomes sinners and even eats with them. See, in their world, you got closer to God by staying away from messy people. But Jesus, his response wasn't an argument. It was a story. Well, actually, it was a series of 3 stories. The lost sheep, the lost coin, and the big finale, the lost son. That's the one we're going to focus on. And each one hammers home the exact same point. God isn't sitting around waiting for us to get our act together. He's the one who comes looking for us. Okay, so let's dive into the story itself, starting with this younger son's journey away from home. So the son comes to his dad and says, "Give me my share of the inheritance." Now, it's so easy for us to just read past that, but in that culture, this was brutal. You only got your inheritance when your father died. So what this son was really saying, looking his dad right in the eye, was, "You are worth more to me dead than alive. I don't want you, I just want your stuff." So of course, the story goes that he takes the money and just blows it all. And what happens? When his money is gone, his entire sense of self collapses with it. And it's funny, this mirrors what psychologists see today. A huge number, 88%, of people who go through a financial collapse also face a massive identity crisis. Because when everything that defined you is gone, who are you? That's exactly where this son finds himself. He ends up getting a job feeding pigs. For a Jewish guy, this was the absolute bottom of the barrel. Pigs were unclean. So for Jesus' audience hearing this for the first time, this wasn't just a bad job, it was total humiliation. Socially, financially, spiritually, he had hit rock bottom. You couldn't get any lower. And it's right there, at that lowest possible point, that we get to the most revolutionary, scandalous, beautiful part of the whole story, the father who ran. The son finally decides to head home, right? He's practicing this big speech about how unworthy he is. But the story says something amazing. It says, while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and ran. And that little word, while, that's everything. While he was still filthy from the pigsty, while his apology was still just a rehearsal in his head, while his motives were totally selfish, he was just hungry, the father was already running. But why is the running such a big deal? Well, in that culture, a man of his status, an elder, never ran. It was seen as completely undignified. He'd have to hike up his robe and expose his legs. It was shameful. So he's not just running out of excitement, he is taking the shame on himself, running to get to his son before the rest of the village does to protect him from their judgment. And before the son can even get a word of his practiced speech out, the father just lavishes him with these 4 gifts. He puts the best robe on him, that restores his honor. He puts a ring on his finger, that restores his family authority. He puts sandals on his feet, that restores his identity as a son, because only slaves went barefoot. And then he throws a huge party, a feast, to restore him to the community. I mean, look at what this says about the Father's grace. It's not gradual. There's no 30-day probation period here. It is immediate. It's complete. And it is totally unconditional. The son isn't just forgiven. The father basically says he was dead, and now he's alive again. It's total restoration. So that leads us to the final and maybe most important part. Where's your place in this story? Because a parable like this, it's meant to be a mirror. So be honest, where do you see yourself here? Are you the younger son? Do you feel like you're a long way from home, that you've just messed up too badly? Well, the invitation for you is simple. Just turn around. Your motives don't even have to be pure. Remember, the kid just came home because he was starving, and the father ran anyway. Or maybe you're the older brother, the one who never left, the one who did everything right, but you're exhausted, maybe a little bitter, totally burnt out from a lifetime of trying to earn what you thought you had to. The invitation for you is to stop performing. Come on inside. The party was always for you too. You know, for anyone out there who feels like they're in that pigsty, the author Henri Nouwen put it this way: the pigsty is not the place where God abandoned you. It is the place where you finally listen. It's often at our lowest point that it gets quiet enough to hear that call to come home. This all reminds me of this incredible modern-day story I heard about a father whose son was lost to addiction. He told his pastor that for 7 straight years, every single morning, he would walk to his front door and just look down the road. Not, he said, because he actually expected to see a son, but because he wanted to be ready if he did. And that is the posture of the father in this story. He's not waiting inside with his arms crossed. He's watching the road, ready to run. So, here's the final question to leave you with. What if we've had it all backwards? What if the gospel isn't the story of our exhausting return to God, but the story of God's relentless, undignified, shame-absorbing run to us?